Hello, this is Bwana from Bwana.tv, and I want to talk about E3. That's the Electronic Entertainment Expo 2008. And E3 is a great conference that has a rich history of bringing a lot of glass and a lot of glass, a lot of glitter, and just a whole bunch of fanfare surrounding gaming. And most notably, it's been famous surrounding more of the console gaming arena than it has been PC gaming lately. And this is one of the things I want to talk about is the three keynotes which were presented the past couple days by Microsoft, Nintendo, and Sony. And last year, I wrote a blog post on Bwana.org expressing my disappointment with all three companies and how they, really just didn't impress a whole lot. I know they're competing. I know they're doing a lot to kind of differentiate themselves amongst their competitors, but they really didn't impress me. So this year I was hoping for more. I set the bar a little bit higher. I was like, okay, last year was a little drab. This year, hopefully, they'll do something better. Unfortunately, it wasn't as good. It was actually, in my opinion, worse. Starting with Microsoft, I think, I don't know, they showed a lot of demos of games we knew about. I guess the theme I'm getting at is it was just more of the same. There was nothing really that really wowed me. Well, until the end of the presentation, of course. I'll get to that in a minute. Nintendo, it was so much more the same. More peripherals, more mini games, same stuff. And Sony, it was, they had the tone of we'll wait and see. The good stuff's coming. Here they had developers up there talking, the potential, the power of the PlayStation 3, what it can do, what we have planned, but nothing was actually there. So rather than focus on the negative this year, I wrote on Bwana.org, and I want to talk about it a little bit now. I want to focus on the positives. These are the things that impressed me. There was little glimmers of hope, so I want to focus on those as much as I can. With Microsoft, two things that impressed me the most. The first thing was the dashboard upgrade that's coming in the fall update. And Microsoft completely revamped their already famous Blade system, and now they're going with, I dare say it looks a lot like CoverFlow on the Mac. It has an image-based system, and it traverses across thumbnails of different parts. It looks a lot like CoverFlow, and they're coming out with an avatar system. So it kind of looks like a combination between Nintendo's Mi system and Sony's proposed PS Home system. I'm not going to say Home because it's not out. It's still in forever beta. It's the proposed system where you can meet up with friends and form what they call a party and do various things such as watch videos, get prepared for games, and chat. So it's all about getting your friends into this virtual avatar-like environment or rooms, very similar to what Sony's doing and Nintendo's doing with the Mi. So this is something that I think is good for the 360. This is going to help them create that other dimension that Sony's providing and Nintendo's providing that they didn't really have. They had the guts of it, but they didn't have the visuals per se. And the other thing was Final Fantasy XIII. Well, that's coming to the 360 now, which shocked everybody, including myself. I never thought it would happen this year, if at all. And the way they did it was very well. It was, they did this long presentation. I was bored, and then they got to the end. It was like, oh yeah, they did. Pretty much did a Steve Jobs. Oh, and one more thing. Here's Final Fantasy XIII for the 360. Shocker. I know. This is an exclusive title that was, to Sony for a while, and before Sony it was Nintendo. And if anything, I thought, Square Enix would go back to Nintendo, not the 360. So, but an interesting point with that is that it's not going to be exclusive in Japan. Only in the United States, or I'm sorry, only in North America and Europe. It's kind of weird. All right, kind of prolonging the time here. Next one is Nintendo. The two things that impressed me with them were, number one, the Wii Motion Plus. I'm glad to see that they're improving the Wii controls because they are a little. It took some getting used to, and there are some quirks with it. So to improve that is a good thing, but I don't want to focus on that too much because it's a controller scheme. gaming is about games, and you know, Microsoft, they really focused on the games. You know, that's where their powerhouse is. But Nintendo, it was more about the control schemes and, you know, the combination of control schemes with the games. But the games, in my opinion, were a little bit weak. And I'm trying to stay positive. The games were a little bit weak. Speaking of the games, they in terms of Wii Motion Plus, you know, they talked about various games that could be used with it. Like there was a wave race type game, they had a sword fighting game, and you know, people are going to be looking for a lightsaber fighting game. You know, that's going to be coming out. There's a Star Wars game that's there's Star Wars Clone Wars, I think is the name of it, or yeah, that might be the name of it. But it's not going to be utilizing Wii Motion Plus, sadly. So maybe a new lightsaber game will be coming out. And the second thing with Nintendo is Wii Music. This is a new title which is utilizing the control scheme again. And it looks fun on the surface. You can imagine Wii Music to be like Rock Band for the Wii, but you're not actually having instruments. You have these you're using the controllers to play and beat drums and things. And they claim they're going to have up to 60 different instruments. Now, this sounds fun on the surface. There isn't a whole lot of depth to it because you really can't mess up the notes. You just press something and, you know, it just happens to work. You just have to have the rhythm sort of right. I think this is a good thing. This is one of the good things I saw from Nintendo. It was hard to find something good from Nintendo's, but I feared that the lasting factor of the game is not going to be as good as it could be. I think people are going to play this for a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, and then they're going to shelf it, maybe until the holiday or maybe until family comes over from out of town or something. But I don't see it. I don't see a big strength in that title. It looks like a, you know, oh, 2 weeks of fun, yay! Put on the shelf. So, trying to stay positive. And finally, Sony. The first thing I did a separate video on is that they're going to supply video content to the PlayStation Network now. You can buy and rent movies on the PlayStation Network, very similar to what Microsoft is doing on Xbox Live and what you can find on Apple TV and, you know, the Netflix and stuff. You know, what DVRs and these appliances for TVs have been doing for years. Sony has finally, you know, enabled this for the PlayStation Network. And the good thing, not only were they enabling it, or were they announced it, the thing that really impressed me is that it was available. It's there now. So right after, like maybe 4 or 5 hours after they announced it, it was available and it's working. So I thought that was a good thing. And I went up and like I said, I did a separate video for this, and you can see the details there. But I think it's a good start to what they need to do to kind of even the playing field with what Microsoft is offering. You know, because I think Microsoft and Sony are more tightly competitors than they are with Nintendo, because I think Nintendo's a little bit different. And the second thing from Sony is this new title called Massive Action Game, which kind of floored me. I was shocked. I mean, in my mind, this is the one thing up there with Final Fantasy XIII. This is the one thing that stood out from the E3 press conferences. It's going to be a first-person shooter type strategy game, which is going to have up to 256 players per world. Now, worlds are not going to be, you're not going to be able to log into a game and see 256 people all at the same time. It's going to be 8-man squads, so there's going to be more of a giant atmospheric type, you know, war thing where you have different squads going out performing various tasks. It's going to be a lot of strategy involved, and it sounds very intricate. And Sony made it a point to say this is not possible in any other system. You can't do this anywhere else. Initially, I was watching the coverage on G4. I don't like G4 either, but on G4 they immediately compared it to PlanetSide. I don't think it's going to be like PlanetSide. PlanetSide was chaotic. In my opinion, PlanetSide was not the best way to organize that many players. You know, there's going to be character development with multi-action games, so it's like going to be like an MMO meets StarCraft meets, you know, Warcraft meets all these different crafts and Command and Conquer, but first-person shooter. So I guess you could imagine it'd be like a real Halo Wars, but you're not in a real-time strategy front. But it's going to be huge. It's just starting development. They had a very basic CG trailer, so it's not even near playable, which kind of goes into the theme of Sony, you know, showing us stuff that's coming but not actually here. But overall, I think Sony had a pretty good year. 2008, they kept saying 2008 was a year of Sony, which I think in a sense it kind of was. They came back from a huge slump. They had great sales. They now have a user base. They are now improving. But is it good enough to beat Microsoft's Final Fantasy XIII announcement? That's the big argument that I'm not going to discuss here. So overall, E3 was kind of a bore. Those were the things that I caught as being some of the more exciting things, but overall I was falling asleep. It was so boring, and it took a lot of effort to even find these positive things. But I'm sure you guys are going to form your own opinions, so discuss them as you will, and I'll be happy to listen to them. Alright, this is Bwana from Bwana.tv, and let's hope Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo do better next year at E3.